We're taking a look back at the biggest political turning points, trends, and controversies as we hit rewind on Rising. We've got the power players, scandals, and outrageous decisions that have defined our conversations. The discovery of an object from outside our solar system is sparking debate in the scientific community. The object is called 3I Atlas, and NASA says that it's a comet that was first discovered in July. It's currently passing through our solar system, reaching a point about 130 million miles from the sun, and it's just the third interstellar object ever discovered in our solar system. There's lots of questions being asked about where it actually comes from, and some are questioning what it even is.
Now, NASA insists everything they've studied about it so far leads them to believe that it's just a normal comet. But physicist Avi Loeb isn't totally convinced. He suggests there's a chance, even if it's just a small one, that the comet is artificially made, meaning it's alien technology. In a series of essays, Loeb has cited anomalies with the comet that he says support the argument of the 3I Atlas being sent to our solar system intentionally, and that, of course, raises questions about who sent it, what their intentions are. Loeb says that even if it's most likely a comet, his alternative hypothesis is worth looking into because of the massive implications it would have for humanity if it turned out to be true.
Loeb is also a Harvard professor and founder of the Galileo Project, which was created to search for evidence of extraterrestrial life. He joins us now here on Rising to talk about his ideas. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's begin by maybe you could describe the characteristics of this object. Are we talking about a very large object, a very small object, what its physical components are? Do we know anything about that? Fill us in.
As soon as it was discovered, it was obvious that this object is quite large. And that was July 1st, 2025. And my wife wanted us to go on vacation, but I realized that I have to write a paper, so I didn't really enjoy the beach much. I estimated the size has to be of order Manhattan Island if the brightness stems from the reflection of the object. Turns out that there is a lower limit on its size, which is about 5 kilometers, and the mass is at least 30 billion tons, based on the fact that it maintains course so far, despite the fact that it's losing 150 kilograms per second. This is a big object. It's a million times more massive than the first interstellar object discovered 8 years ago. And the question is, why haven't we found millions of smaller objects before we find this giant one? And then on top of that, it looks as if it came along the plane of the planets around the sun. The chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500. And the question arises as to whether this trajectory was planned as part of a reconnaissance mission, because it's coming very close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, unusually close. For that, you need to arrange a special timing so that it will be at the right time at the right place. And it came closest to the sun yesterday. Unfortunately, we can't look at it from Earth because the Earth is on the opposite side of the sun. That could have also been a hint of a technological design. We found in the gas around it, we found nickel without iron, very little iron, mostly nickel. And the only place where we have such a composition is nickel alloys that are produced industrially for aerospace applications. And there was a jet coming from this object, a glow that extended towards the sun during July and August. We don't see that around comets. This is an anti-tail. Usually we see dust and gas which are pushed away from the sun as a result of the solar radiation pressure or the solar wind. Now, yesterday, the first report about what it's doing closest to the sun came out. These are instruments that are capable of looking very close to the sun. And it was realized that, in fact, the object is brightening. It becomes very bright right now as it comes close to the sun, and it's turning blue. And the color blue is very surprising because if there is any dust shed off a natural nucleus of a comet, the dust would make it red. And usually the surface of the object is at least an order of magnitude cooler than the surface of the sun. But what the new data indicates is that the object is bluer than the sun. How is that possible? For that, you need to arrange a temperature somewhere on the object, which is higher than the temperature of the sun in order for it to be bluer than the sun. And the sun has a surface temperature of 5,800 degrees Kelvin above absolute zero. That's huge. That's 20 times the temperature on Earth right now. So the question is, what is going on? And I'm saying it could be a black swan event where we expect it most likely to be a natural object, but we have to attend to the possibility that it might not be natural just because the implications would be huge for humanity.
Now, Avi, I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit freaked out when I first read this news. I'm like, 3AI, what's a 3I Atlas? But now that I want to understand, people could see you and know that you are a smart man. We're not talking about somebody on X who just pointed out some random conspiracy theory. You're teaching at Harvard. Explain why you're not getting the response that you're looking for from professionals and other leaders like NASA team to really look into this. What's the issue?
Yeah, the issue is that scientists, and that's completely justified, very often are attracted to the most likely explanation. That's what establishes them as experts. Experts are relying on past knowledge. But here we have a blind date with an interstellar visitor, and it's a blind date of a type that we've never had before. So relying on past knowledge is not a good practice. But more importantly, usually, if you look at an exploding star at the edge of the universe, it has no implications for society. So it's better not to take risks and say, oh, that's an exploding star of a type that we understand. However, in a case where you have a visitor to your backyard, the visitor might enter through your front door. That's a situation where there is an important threat to humanity, and therefore even low probability events have to be taken seriously. That's something that the scientific community, including NASA, does not necessarily understand. Now, NASA does understand the fact that there could be rocks that come close to Earth, and we know that the dinosaurs were killed 66 million years ago by a giant rock the size of Manhattan Island. We know that, and therefore NASA has a plan to discover near-Earth objects that could pose a threat to us if they are rocks. But NASA did not think as of yet about the possibility that an object which has some technology in it might be in the sky, even though NASA itself launched a lot of technological objects into the sky. And I'm just saying NASA is not the most accomplished space agency in the Milky Way galaxy since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. We better recognize that. It would be arrogant to claim that NASA is the only agency polluting space with technological objects. So if there was another NASA-like agency around an exoplanet billions of years ago, simply because the parent star formed billions of years before the sun, we know most of the stars formed before the sun. The sun just is a late star that formed just in the last 1/3 of cosmic history. The point is that their gadgets could have arrived at our backyard by now, because even Voyager takes less than 1 billion years to cross the entire Milky Way galaxy. And that's enough time for gadgets from other civilizations to have reached us. So we should be open-minded when we see new objects that are anomalous. Unfortunately, most scientists do not take risks. I'm saying, well, it's fine not to take risks, except when you deal with an implication to humanity or society. We have to consider these possibilities, and we have to collect as much data as possible. That's my point. If it turns out to be a natural object, which it may very well be, so be it. What could be the worst case scenario? That we know much more about it. But we cannot just dismiss it as a natural object that we don't need to take data about.
Dr. Loeb, thank you so much for joining us to elucidate that. Very fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, podcaster and actress Jennifer Welch is being heavily criticized for comments that she made on the left's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. We'll handle that up next. The discovery of an object from outside our solar system is sparking debate in the scientific community. The object is called 3I Atlas, and NASA says that it's a comet that was first discovered in July. It's currently passing through our solar system, reaching a point about 130 million miles from the sun, and it's just the third interstellar object ever discovered in our solar system. There's lots of questions being asked about where it actually comes from, and some are questioning what it even is.
Now, NASA insists everything they've studied about it so far leads them to believe that it's just a normal comet. But physicist Avi Loeb isn't totally convinced. He suggests there's a chance, even if it's just a small one, that the comet is artificially made, meaning it's alien technology. In a series of essays, Loeb has cited anomalies with the comet that he says support the argument of the three-eye atlas being sent to our solar system intentionally, and that, of course, raises questions about who sent it, what their intentions are. Loeb says that even if it's most likely a comet, his alternative hypothesis is worth looking into because of the massive implications it would have for humanity if it turned out to be true.
Loeb is also a Harvard professor and founder of the Galileo Project, which was created to search for evidence of extraterrestrial life. He joins us now here on Rising to talk about his ideas. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's begin by maybe you could describe the characteristics of this object. Are we talking about a very large object, a very small object, what its physical components are? Do we know anything about that? Fill us in.
As soon as it was discovered, it was obvious that this object is quite large. And that was July 1st, 2025. And my wife wanted us to go on vacation, but I realized that I have to write a paper, so I didn't really enjoy the beach much. I estimated the size has to be of order Manhattan Island if the brightness stems from the reflection of the object. Turns out that there is a lower limit on its size, which is about 5 kilometers, and the mass is at least 30 billion tons, based on the fact that it maintains course so far, despite the fact that it's losing 150 kilograms per second. This is a big object. It's a million times more massive than the first interstellar object discovered 8 years ago. And the question is, why haven't we found millions of smaller objects before we find this giant one? And then on top of that, it looks as if it came along the plane of the planets around the sun. The chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500. And the question arises as to whether this trajectory was planned as part of a reconnaissance mission, because it's coming very close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, unusually close. For that, you need to arrange a special timing so that it will be at the right time at the right place. And it came closest to the sun yesterday. Unfortunately, we can't look at it from Earth because the Earth is on the opposite side of the sun. That could have also been a hint of a technological design. We found in the gas around it, we found nickel without iron, very little iron, mostly nickel. And the only place where we have such a composition is nickel alloys that are produced industrially for aerospace applications. And there was a jet coming from this object, a glow that extended towards the sun during July and August. We don't see that around comets. This is an anti-tail. Usually we see dust and gas which are pushed away from the sun as a result of the solar radiation pressure or the solar wind. Now, yesterday, the first report about what it's doing closest to the sun came out. These are instruments that are capable of looking very close to the sun. And it was realized that, in fact, the object is brightening. It becomes very bright right now as it comes close to the sun, and it's turning blue. And the color blue is very surprising because if there is any dust shed off a natural nucleus of a comet, the dust would make it red. And usually the surface of the object is at least an order of magnitude cooler than the surface of the sun. But what the new data indicates is that the object is bluer than the sun. How is that possible? For that, you need to arrange a temperature somewhere on the object which is higher than the temperature of the sun in order for it to be bluer than the sun. And the sun has a surface temperature of 5,800 degrees Kelvin above absolute zero. That's huge. That's 20 times the temperature on Earth right now. So the question is, what is going on? And I'm saying it could be a black swan event where we expect it most likely to be a natural object, but we have to attend to the possibility that it might not be natural just because the implications would be huge for humanity.
Now, Avi, I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit freaked out when I first read this news. I'm like, 3AI, what's a 3-eye atlas? But now that I want to understand, people could see you and know that you are a smart man. We're not talking about somebody on X who just pointed out some random conspiracy theory. You're teaching at Harvard. Explain why you're not getting the response that you're looking for from professionals and other leaders like NASA team to really look into this. What's the issue?
Yeah, the issue is that scientists, and that's completely justified, very often are attracted to the most likely explanation. That's what establishes them as experts. Experts are relying on past knowledge. But here we have a blind date with an interstellar visitor, and it's a blind date of a type that we've never had before. So relying on past knowledge is not a good practice. But more importantly, usually, if you look at an exploding star at the edge of the universe, it has no implications for society. So it's better not to take risks and say, oh, that's an exploding star of a type that we understand. However, in a case where you have a visitor to your backyard, the visitor might enter through your front door. That's a situation where there is an important threat to humanity, and therefore even low probability events have to be taken seriously. That's something that the scientific community, including NASA, does not necessarily understand. Now, NASA does understand the fact that there could be rocks that come close to Earth, and we know that the dinosaurs were killed 66 million years ago by a giant rock the size of Manhattan Island. We know that, and therefore NASA has a plan to discover near-Earth objects that could pose a threat to us if they are rocks. But NASA did not think as of yet about the possibility that an object which has some technology in it might be in the sky, even though NASA itself launched a lot of technological objects into the sky. And I'm just saying NASA is not the most accomplished space agency in the Milky Way galaxy since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. We better recognize that. It would be arrogant to claim that NASA is the only agency polluting space with technological objects. So if there was another NASA-like agency around an exoplanet billions of years ago, simply because the parent star formed billions of years before the sun, we know most of the stars formed before the sun. The sun just is a late star that formed just in the last 1/3 of cosmic history. The point is that their gadgets could have arrived at our backyard by now, because even Voyager takes less than 1 billion years to cross the entire Milky Way galaxy. And that's enough time for gadgets from other civilizations to have reached us. So we should be open-minded when we see new objects that are anomalous. Unfortunately, most scientists do not take risks. I'm saying, well, it's fine not to take risks, except when you deal with an implication to humanity or society. We have to consider these possibilities, and we have to collect as much data as possible. That's my point. If it turns out to be a natural object, which it may very well be, so be it. What could be the worst case scenario? That we know much more about it. But we cannot just dismiss it as a natural object that we don't need to take data about.
Dr. Loeb, thank you so much for joining us to elucidate that. Very fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
Microsoft founder and former richest man in the world, Bill Gates, surprised many people with an essay that he published on Tuesday. Now, Gates has long been a vocal activist for fighting against climate change, donating billions of dollars to support climate research and investments.
But in his essay, Gates writes that a strategic pivot is necessary in the fight against climate change and that some of the money spent on it should be redirected elsewhere. Gates says in part, quote, "Our chief goal should be to prevent suffering, particularly for those in the toughest conditions who live in the world's poorest countries. Although climate change will hurt poor people more than anyone else, for the vast majority of them, it will not be the only or even the biggest threat to their lives and welfare. The biggest problems are poverty, disease, just as they always have been." He then listed his 3 tough truths about climate change. The first one says climate change is a serious problem, but will not be the end of civilization. The second says temperature is not the best way to measure our progress on climate. And lastly, health and prosperity are the best defense against climate change.
Gates went on to say that he knows some people will call him a hypocrite for saying this, but he expanded on his thoughts in an interview with CNBC.
Shouldn't we, in our awareness of how little generosity there is to help, measure, should we get them a measles vaccine, or should we do some climate related activity? And if we stop funding all vaccines and that, saved you 0.1 degree, would that be a smart trade-off? That's the kind of question we have to ask. So I'm a climate activist, but I'm also a child survival activist.
Now, some people online viewed Gates' essay as him turning his back on his old beliefs. Maxwell Meyer, writing for Arena magazine, writes on X, "This is a white flag from someone who fought hard for an insane set of ideas and lost." Daily Wire reporter Megan Basham says, "Here's what I know. Stick to what you know to be true long enough, and eventually the fever passes, fashionable trends crumble, and you can hold your head high, knowing that you never bought into the consensus."
Now, Gates' comments come ahead of the United Nations Climate Change Conference. The 30th annual meeting is held in Brazil from November 10th to November 21st.
Well, I welcome Bill Gates to Club Reality, which is not that climate change is not happening or that it's made up or anything like that. Human activity, well, the climate has been changing for hundreds and hundreds of years, for as long as there was climate on planet Earth, and human activity does contribute to it. That's not in contention, but the more apocalyptic predictions of climate, of people active on that issue, did not come true. From ridiculous things to, there's going to be the extinction event. There's overcrowding, overpopulation, all that stuff. None of it happened, which is good. And just prioritizing fighting rises in temperature, if the trade-off is living miserably or starvation or the disease mitigation efforts thwarted in the third world, that would not be worthy trade-offs. So I agree with what he's saying here completely. That this was not his position prior, but he's landed in the correct place. I wonder if, like liberal left climate activists, people, their hair is going to be on fire because of this, contributing to the hole in the ozone with their burning hair follicles. But this is what people I've listened to, Michael Schellenberger, and who's been a guest on our program multiple times, what he's been saying for years. So welcome to the team.
Well, I am, for one, not a hysterical climate activist. I do think what Bill Gates was saying is that climate change does matter, but maybe the way that we talk about it is causing more harm than good,
right,
and even to the poorest people. I would look at it this way. Instead of the climate activists, who I believe have good intentions, feeling like Bill Gates is now undercutting them because
I'm not sure they do have good intentions.
Well, I think that I like to believe glass half full.
At paintings.
Okay. Fine.
Those people.
We can talk about the worst type of protesters.
Every time.
And then we can talk about an overall movement.
The temperature got 10 degrees higher, okay? That's what it makes me want to do when they throw soup at paintings.
Instead of climate activists feeling like he's trying to undercut them, since he did describe himself still as a climate activist, maybe this could finally be a bridge to have a conversation with people that are in power on both sides of the aisle, that think that maybe the hysterics weren't necessary, but the conversation still is, to figure out a real way to have less dramatic conversations about solutions. It doesn't have to be number one on the list. I think he's acknowledging that, but it needs to be on the list. And so that's where to start, instead of being like, oh my gosh, the roof is on fire, we have to do something right now, the world's going to end. Like, that was never a good starting point, because some people were looking at today and right now and saying, yes, it's hysterical. And I told you I'm not hysterical. I do think that he's trying to take a more of a pragmatic angle, which also will lead to hopefully future real solutions. We should be mindful of our environment. I don't think it's a bad thing that people, the hysterical part you could do away with. Well, we should all be mindful and treat our environment better, right? You talk about how the economy and the government and the money we spend will be terrible situation for our kids. Well, guess what? If they don't have an earth to live in because we trash it, then that's also not going to be great for them too. So we could all do better with that, right? Stop littering, stop doing those things, maybe stop using the can spray.
Yeah, stop littering.
Yeah, we can all do better.
We don't want to live in filth and squalor anyway. So
so we can all just take care of our
regardless of the impact.
I don't think you can say that's a bad mission to say that people who cared about the climate and how that contributes to the deterioration of the world are bad people. That's not a bad intention. They're caring about the things out there. Now, the hysterical part, I'll agree with you, but I'll never bash a climate activist just because they want to make our world better.
I'll bash them.
But why?
I will bash
why? I don't think
Greta
Bill Gates
Thunberg, those types of...
I like her a lot.
Oh, she's...
When you were her age, what were you doing, Robbie? That's a noble young girl.
I was in school.
Exactly. Well, she's doing something noble. She's fighting for what she believes in, okay? I don't think she needs to go back to school. I think she's doing...
I think she's dumb, but that's fine.
Dumb? That's such strong language for a young girl who's inspiring millions.
I don't have to, oh, she's inspired... I don't have to agree with
But
her.
dumb? She's just a young girl who's fighting for what she believes in. Why is that dumb?
She doesn't know what she's talking about. She is exactly the kind of hysterical, anti-progress human being I'm describing, because the best way, here's the policy, the best way to mitigate the harms of climate change is improved technological innovation, which requires energy use and requires capitalism to be unleashed. It requires us to free the inventive, productive sectors of the economy to find new and innovative ways to produce energy more efficiently and more cheaply. And that requires less government regulation, less subsidies for existing sources of energy. It just requires getting governments out of the way, and that's not the set of policies that progressive activist type people ever favor.
Like Bill Gates.
Like Greta Thunberg.
Okay, but
Yeah.
maybe Bill Gates is open to that conversation, which is a great thing. That to me, that's a good thing. I also think, he's calling for a little bit of balance. He's calling for innovation. I mean, this is one of the most innovative guys in our history.
Nuclear power plants was a huge mistake because nuclear power, I know we all, Chernobyl, nuclear power is safe
Chernobyl wasn't small.
and clean compared to compared to fossil fuels. So you should move from fossil fuels to nuclear, and then when possible, when it's economically productive to do so, to wind and solar and whatever else. Fine, but you can't force that. You can't just say, "Oh, we banished coal."
And especially, I agree with you, and especially if that money is taking away from helping some of the poorest in our world to accomplish missions of solar power in the U.S. or elsewhere to make our climate more that's not effective, right? If the world's suffering on behalf of getting more solar panels, we got to figure out how to keep people
Also,
alive.
people make ridiculous claims. Like every time now there's a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever, people say, "Oh, see what climate change is
getting
causing
so warm out."
severe weather."
Well, hurricane is caused by the warmth, I believe.
No, there's no statistical correlation.
The water is
between
warm.
Changing climate change and more severe weather events. Fewer people die in advanced countries from severe weather events than ever before. Because even though we've warmed the temperature ever so slightly or warmed the waters ever so slightly, we've built more reinforced buildings because of
So
the
that's what Bill Gates. So what about the poor people then?
Well, so we need to make available to them the same kind of developments, and that takes...
That's maybe more precedence over
Exactly,
climate change.
exactly. So we can mitigate the
Well, hopefully Bill Gates comes to the table and has more of these conversations. Real-time host Bill Maher once again calling out New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani.
Maher was speaking with former White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield and brought up the topic of Mamdani's Ugandan citizenship. Here's what Maher had to say.
I mean, the issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they kill homosexuals.
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose policy, government policy, was we kill homosexuals, I would renounce that citizenship.
Mamdani was born in Uganda, but his family moved to South Africa when he was 5 and then to New York when he was 7. He does maintain dual citizenship with Uganda, a country that is considered by many to be one of the most hostile in the world for homosexuals. But Mamdani has been a vocal supporter of LGBTQ rights throughout his campaign.
Maher also brought up a controversial meeting that Mamdani had last week with Imam Siraj Wahhaj, a Muslim leader whom prosecutors have alleged was connected to the 1993 World Trade Center bombings. Maher said he's not sure if Mamdani winning next week's election will be a good look for the Democratic Party. He also defended Andrew Cuomo, who recently chuckled when a conservative radio host said that Mamdani would cheer a September 11th style attack happening again today. That drew criticism from some, including former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. In an appearance on CNN, Buttigieg endorsed Mamdani and had this to say.
I think he has the capacity to be a great mayor. I think right now has been taking a lot of steps that are not just about winning, but about trying to bring people together, which is something that I think a lot of people didn't see in him or expect from him earlier on in the campaign. So he hasn't asked me for an endorsement. I don't think he needs me in order to win, but I think it's a really important and exciting race to watch.
So you've been more impressed by him than by Andrew Cuomo?
I mean, Andrew Cuomo has disqualified himself in so many ways, including morally. And that's just one of many reasons why I think so many New Yorkers are going to vote for Mamdani.
As for Bill Maher's comments, they didn't go over very well with many on the left. Democratic strategist Liz Smith writes the quote, lack of understanding about Uganda, Uganda's history and its people and different cultures of all of this is insane. And writer MJ Salem says, quote, Zionist Bill Maher couldn't care less about Uganda's treatment of homosexuals. He's just using it as a pretext to oppose Mamdani.
I don't know about that.
I mean, I don't know about being born because your parents were somewhere and then you renounced the entire country as part of your campaign about New York. Mamdani has been very direct and clear about his support for New Yorkers and focusing on those issues. People have asked him about a slew of issues around the world, and he's like, I'm talking about New Yorkers. So if New Yorkers want to talk about that and what I have to say, then I'll talk about that directly. And I think that that answer is the right answer. Well, you're not running for a federal election.
I think they're just wondering why he hasn't renounced.
But if somebody asks him the question, he surely can. I think the fact that the question wasn't on the table
I don't
because
think he's going to
no
renounce
one's
his
trying to
Ugandan citizenship.
Why should he?
anytime
No, he shouldn't
soon.
let go of the citizenship, but he can denounce what the government's doing. I don't think you should let go of a citizenship to a whole entire country. There's plenty of things that President Trump has done that people might say, oh, you should I should move away to Canada. I hate when people say that when they're about to leave the country because they don't like an elected official.
You know, I don't like.
So I just think that's ridiculous that you're asking this man to take away the fact that he's able to transport back and forth to the country that he was born because of their policies over there. You can denounce them all day. That doesn't mean you have to relinquish your citizenship.
I don't need him to
somewhere where
denounce them all day. I just need him.
He can denounce them.
once.
Yeah, he should denounce them. But I said he's never been asked the question from what I understand. So Bill Maher's bringing it up. Have him on the show and ask him the question. I'm sure he would easily,
I would like to see him
because of his
denounce the views of his
policy push, that he would easily denounce what Uganda and how it feels on homosexuality.
I don't know.
But let go of your citizenship is extreme. That doesn't seem like that.
All I have seen Mamdani say about the LGBTQ community is that abolishing the police would be good for them. Remember his tweet, we must abolish the police for queer justice. I'm not sure why getting rid of the police would be some positive move for protecting gay people. Maybe he can explain that to me, although I guess he's backpedaled from that position. I would like to see him denounce, more so than the nation of Uganda, remarks by his father, which were circulating on social media over the weekend. His father saying that America is just the worst country ever. Abraham Lincoln is responsible for Nazism. The Nazis were inspired by Lincoln. It was just some absolutely baffling remarks to me. Maybe we'll discuss them tomorrow. Maybe we'll play them. Why his father hates this country, clearly prefers the Islamic extremism of a place like Uganda, and I want to know if that's indicative of Mamdani's thinking too. Okay, and then, if so, is it appropriate for someone of those views or someone of that family to be presiding over a city that was attacked by Islamic radicals 20 years ago?
And I think people have been trying to make some kind of connection like this for so long. And even when Cuomo was on a recent radio show and agreed or seemed to smirk or laugh or entertain the conservative radio host who said Mamdani would be, quote, cheering if the 9/11 attacks happen on his watch, I think that's disgusting. And that's when you get into the conversation about what are we really talking about? Are we trying to be have a phobia of Mamdani and his upbringing here? Or are we actually tying something to some facts? I don't think that the man would like to see 9/11 happen to the city that he's campaigning to be mayor of.
And then, then you get called an Islamophobic for wondering about
for bringing up if he would cheer on 9/11. I don't think any New Yorker would cheer on 9/11. I think that's disgusting to say.
I pointed out that there was a cartoon on Friday or something of the plane flying into the tower, but it was not. It said the plane said Mamdani and socialism on it. It had the sickle. It was red, and Mehdi Hassan was saying, "Oh, this is Islamophobia." Anyway, Islam is a set of beliefs. It's not a race. It's not a. It's just as one can criticize religious extremism and do criticize religious extremism when we're talking about Christianity or anything else. Now we can't criticize this.
You could criticize Mamdani, but saying he would cheer on what basis would he cheer on the 9/11 attacks, the most disgusting attacks in our country's history? Tell me that why he would
my
cheer
criticism
that on.
of Mamdani.
I don't think that he would.
My criticisms of Mamdani are mostly focused on his very radical and very extreme economic agenda, his socialist agenda, which is radical and is extreme.
And that's fair.
I don't know
Let's
that his
definitely
Muslim views are particularly
fine.
extreme.
That's why I said let's call
his father's
that.
Muslim views are very extreme indeed.
But so let's say like a week out before the election, you want him to focus on renouncing. I mean, not you. Bill Maher wants him to focus on renouncing his citizenship of Uganda. He wants him to focus on perhaps what his father may have said, even though he's the one running. You want him to focus on all of these things when Sliwa is not even have a chance. Cuomo is dragging way behind him, but you want him to focus on all this negative stuff rather than his policies. I think there's a split in the Democratic Party right now because only a Democrat is winning in New York. So Slee was just there like for show. So whatever. That's
He's going to win. I'm not denying that he's going to win. He's going to win.
So why would you spend? Is that smart to you? Tactically, he can address all this when he wins. But a week out from the election, you want him to sit there and say, oh, let me announce all these critics who actually don't even want me here in general unless to mock my policies. Let me answer to all of them or answer to the constituents that are propelling him up. I think Cuomo historically has the minds, and I'm saying this as a New Yorker. I'm born and raised there, and I talk to older people there. There's still some interest in Cuomo, the name recognition, the way that people felt about his past leadership. People are skipping over a lot of things that I find that are, like I feel like Pete Buttigieg, he shouldn't run. But the fact that he's still in the race, that's fine. He's in the race. So
I don't have anything nice to say about Cuomo.
But that's what I'm saying. And then the younger people like Mamdani a lot. There's an extreme disconnect. So you always talk about allowing the younger people to have a voice. I think they do here and in New York, and we're just going to see how these policies play out. A lot of them might be pie in the sky. We'll see how they all fall into place. But I do think that people are ready for something new and some change.
I don't consider
and they should allow it to
52% to be pie in the sky. I consider it to
pie in the sky, like to create funding for new moms and housing.
Oh my God.
Like this is what he's campaigning on. So I'd like to see it as a mom who's sort of new. I don't live in New York, but I'd like to see how it plays out for moms over there. And then we could campaign for that same thing to happen in DC.
And recognize that the most important city in the country, one of the most important cities in the world, is about to elect someone, a person of very little experience running anything, let alone this powerful, vast city, someone of a very, very, very extreme social and economic policies, a policy of socialism that fails everywhere it has tried, that results in the great impoverishing, someone who not once, not twice, but like 20 times tweeted that he wants to defund or abolish the police, and someone who himself does not manifest any extremist religious views at all, but certainly comes from a family that does. So I am very troubled by what New York is about to decide. I don't doubt that they're going to do it, and that there are, to be clear, there are no good alternatives. So fine,
It is what it is.
But it is what it is.
And
but
also
I have the right to express grave concern about it.
Well, this is what I say. If you feel so gravely concerned, you know what? It's the same thing I told the people that had grave concern about President Trump being president again. Mm-hmm. We're going to live. We're going to survive. It's not the end of times. It's not the worst of times. We're going to see how this couple years goes and then move forward. Now, from what we understood, people who were saying, and harsh critics of President Trump and all his ideas about immigration and how farmers, business owners, and people in communities are responding, how people said about the way that he wants to hold up tax breaks for rich people over all other things and why we had this big, ugly bill. Mm-hmm. Many things that we could have called out in the beginning, the way that he wanted to attack DEI programs, and don't even start this conversation about DEI because we're not going down this rabbit hole. But the way that he wanted to do all these things, we could have called this. But guess what? It's not the end of times. And so Mamdani can run New York, and y'all going to have to get over it, okay? You can't win them all. Slee don't have a chance over there.
I think abolishing the police is a more radical agenda than eliminating some diversity program.
You know what? Well, we disagree.
Well,
and I don't think the term was to abolish
but
police.
The American people do not.
No, because it wasn't to abolish the police. I told you for the last time. Defunding the police meant allocating resources to other professionals within community policing and not just providing all the money to police officers that are trained to shoot first and ask questions later, which we've seen in many body cam situations. Well, they've too many times for people of color that was happening around the times that we saw multiple people being killed by police.
You're talking about a handful of incidents.
Which is too much. It's too much. It's not a bad apple when a police kills a person. They shouldn't be killing an innocent person.
But more people will die if there's no police resources.
No, I didn't say no. That's why I said it's not about no police. It's like, how do you respond to somebody having
Well, tell him it's not about no police, because that's what he tweeted.
Well, if I get a chance to sit down with Mamdani, I will. But now, people are allowed to change and develop their stances like President Trump has multiple times, right? He's allowed to massage and figure out where he stands today. So allow Mamdani the room to do the same thing. What?
He's tweeted some of these things as recently as 3 years ago.
Okay, President Trump was president couple years ago, and
what
now
has Trump changed his mind about over the course of the last 8 years? Has he changed his mind?
You say that he's opposed to multiple things of the Republican Party historically.
But he's been tariffs. He's been for tariffs Since the 80s.
Well,
He doesn't change his mind.
Well, the party
about
must
that.
have been changing their mind because they're seeing
No,
what's going on.
he changed the party's mind.
No, I think the party just agreeing to agree so they could keep power, right? Knowing what the play is after
Yeah,
President
but that's
Trump
not an example
leaves.
of Trump changing his mind. That's an example of Trump moving the Republican
Okay, well,
Party
let's say
in
it's
his
an easy
direction.
one. They changed his mind about Epstein. Him and his whole crew changed their mind about how serious it was and releasing the
didn't
files.
change his mind about that
yes, I'm
either.
still talking about Epstein. He changed
said it
his
was
mind.
not important.
Pam
He
Bondi
said he
changed
was
her
asking-
mind. Cash Patel changed her mind. That's my easiest. You rolled me. You finger rolled me into that one. Yes, he changed his mind.
That's not Trump changing his mind. He made them.
He said this is a hoax now. That's changing your mind. It wasn't a hoax a year ago.
From the start, he didn't care
He
about
didn't
this.
say that it was a
not
hoax. Now
important.
he's saying that it's a
He
hoax.
said if
Hoax
there
means
was-
a lie. Hoax means a trick. Hoax means fake. Okay, what is he doing?
Saying it's just not true, though.
No,
he said in interviews that releasing the Epstein files was not nearly as important as the other things he wanted to release, that he's not opposed to doing it, but he thinks some innocent people would be smeared by association if he did it, and so they'd look at it, but it was not a main
And then his
priority.
team
That's
went on
what he
rampages,
said.
his team that are directly aligned with him and some of his top spokespeople, Cash Patel
Okay,
and
if your
Pam
claim
Bondi.
was people who work for Trump have been forced to change their positions on issues because of Trump, I would have agreed with you. But that's different than saying
I think that
Trump
he was.
changed his
I
mind.
think that he was one of the people that was going to release the Epstein file. He leaned into that with MAGA. That's why people were so excited for these files to be released. And then all of a sudden now it's a hoax and a lie and irrelevant. That's to me a swaying, if not a complete flip flop. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee has released its report detailing its findings on Joe Biden's use of an autopen during his presidency.
The use of an autopen to replicate signatures is not unusual for a president, but the scathing report alleges that Biden's top aides used it to facilitate executive actions without his knowledge. Now, the leaders of the report are asking Attorney General Pam Bondi to open a full investigation into the matter. And they say all executive actions signed with the autopen should be deemed invalid, including pardons. Now, the 100-page long report reads in part, as President Biden declined, his staff abused the autopen and a lax chain of command policy in order to effect executive actions that lack any documentation of whether they were in fact authorized. The committee has found that there was in fact a cover-up of the president's cognitive decline and that there is no record demonstrating President Biden himself made all of the executive decisions that were attributed to him.
Now, the Oversight Committee is led by Representative James Comer, who says this will go down as, quote, one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history. And House Speaker Mike Johnson joined in on the calls for Biden's presidential pardons to be voided.
And this report includes 47 hours worth of transcripts and testimony revealing that every executive action signed by the autopen without written authorization from President Biden should be voided. This is an unprecedented situation in American politics and government. The actions of President Biden simply were not all his own actions, and there are major implications to that, including all the pardons that he signed.
Over the summer, as the committee was working on its report, Biden repeatedly denied the claims that his administration was issuing executive orders and pardons without him knowing about it. In a phone interview with the New York Times in July, he said, quote, I made every decision, and then called President Trump and other Republicans liars. Representative Robert Garcia, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, released his own statement following the report. That statement reads, quote, despite this sham investigation, every White House official testified President Biden fully executed his duties as President of the United States. The testimonies also make it clear the former president authorized every executive order, pardon, and use of the autopen.
As for what happens next, Pam Bondi says her DOJ team is already conducting its own review of the Biden administration's use of the autopen. She says the new information in the House committee's report is extremely helpful, which is good news. Man.
Talk about beating a dead horse. Yeah.
Beating a dead horse. Well,
oh
we had
gosh.
the dead horse was our president.
No.
And I don't want him beaten. I want him held accountable.
I just want, okay, before we get into it, because I think there's a lot to talk about here and a lot that we might agree upon, a lot that we won't agree upon, certainly. But a major point and a reality check in this whole thing is that Axios reports this committee report was actually only issued by Republican-led majority, meaning no Democrats wanted to do this, and it was also cherry-picked. They cherry-picked parts of this entire transcript and testimony by Biden's team, and full transcripts and the interviews are not even available, and they'll be released later. So once we have all that information, I'm happy to sort through this with you. But because Republicans only picked through the information and decided what was best and what was worst, then that is what we're going off of. And, anything can be salacious if I clip together parts. We know that apparently Trump thinks that Canada's team in government is being salacious because they pick parts of a speech that actually go together and tell a story that a past president was trying to tell. So if that's the case, we don't like cherry picking. Let's just have equal opportunity, no cherry picking. This team is cherry picking. And so once we get that clear, we understand that, right? We can't just have
Let's do it this
only
way.
Republicans
Let's get
picking out
President
sound
Biden back on camera.
Because he was on camera just this week, so.
Giving a prepared remark. Let's ask him, President Biden, we'll read through all the names. We'll put some fake names in there and see if he can tell the difference. Did you pardon this person?
Well, who wants a quiz?
Did you pardon this person?
He should be in his retired phase of life. Who wants to get quizzed? Robbie, that's ridiculous. I
bet he wouldn't know who he'd pardoned and who he hadn't. I bet he wouldn't know.
So
I know that he didn't know because I did a radar a year ago about how he had inadvertently pardoned the Cash for Kids scandal judge. Do you know of this? This was a infamous scandal. I think it's from Pennsylvania.
But Trump has a pardon czar.
Let me finish. And they pardoned this guy who, reprehensible, sent kids to a detention center because he'd been paid to send them there. It was a whole scandal. Got released during COVID, was supposed to go back to jail, just got a pardon, and the administration got out, why did you pardon this guy? And they said, we pardoned this guy? What? We have no idea what you're talking about. They didn't even know. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what he was doing while he was president.
Historically,
and that's the concerning thing.
Presidents pardon a lot of people, every single president, Democrat and Republican, and Trump has a pardon czar, meaning that he might be like, oh, she advised me, yeah, okay, let's do it.
And then he says
I hope
on
for the
Truth
most part
Social
that they
and explains why he's doing it, which is nice.
Sure.
And that's him.
Sure.
That's not an aide writing
Listen,
that.
I don't know. Trump is our oldest inaugurated president. I can't tell. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder.
Does anyone think an aide is writing his Truth Social posts? I don't. I think that's him.
Look, I think I'll find a point
I
that
would
we
bet
can,
my life on it.
I'll find a point that we can discuss about this because I think that we agree here. When I saw that, and I found it interesting that some of his closest aides, Biden and Joe Biden, because we know Joe Biden was the warden in this situation from what we understood, a lot of those closest aides in this investigation have pleaded the fifth. So they won't even give any information surrounding whether Biden was sheltered in any way or whether he had, and not about the autopen, specifically about his cognitive decline.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it.
Right, which I think is interesting. But I think that Steve Ricchetti, he said he's one of Biden's top aides. He said that he blamed the chattering class on why Biden had this downfall. And he thought that it was the chattering class of the same media that you don't like the same media that's starting to criticize President Biden after that. I think that, so when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to give Robbie his moments here because I think.
It's not the media's fault that Biden, is the media's.
He said it was a cheap shot and the chattering class that made that disastrous debate performance more exacerbated than what he actually felt it was and what the team knew what happened was that he had a tired guy there.
He's delusional. That is a delusional perspective. That's the perspective of the inner circle and Karine Jean-Pierre.
I must say, maybe it goes to say there's more than one person that has that thought because Karine Jean-Pierre said there's nothing was wrong with it.
There's 7 of them, and they're morons for thinking this. They're just they could not be more out of touch. They should not work in politics again. They should leave the country. They should be phased out.
Extraditing folks just because of a belief?
Well, they're wrong and they're bad. And look, it's not my problem. They have wrecked the Democratic Party's credibility with the American people. I guess that's good news for Republicans. They're Republicans' best friend.
No, they're going to independent now.
Going independent.
Or maybe they should go to your party.
They should go away. We don't want them. We don't want them.
You can't speak for the whole party.
I'm speaking right now for everyone with an independent bone in their body. We don't want these people who are more loyal to Joe Biden than to the country. They were loyal to a man when they should have been loyal to principles and to our country and to our system of governance, and they failed. And the pardons, look, the reasons the pardons matter is because Hunter Biden was pardoned. Dr. Fauci was pardoned.
You don't think he was aware that he pardoned his own son?
I think he was probably aware.
Okay, come on now. So thank you.
Although, may I have your hand? So this is you got the pen. This is Jill Biden going, yes.
Well, I'm a mom.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. I'm pardoning my son, and I would bet my life on the fact that President Trump would pardon any of his children, and he would probably do it midterm. He wouldn't even have the nerve to wait till the end and step out of office like Biden did. He was trying to say, no, I won't do it, and then waited till he leaves so the criticism could die away. President Trump would do it the same day that his son got
the one
arrested.
I care about the most is the Fauci pardon, because there is credible evidence brought forth that Dr. Fauci was the foremost advocate of gain-of-function research being conducted in unsafe lab conditions in China. This research was paused by Barack Obama. President Obama issued an order to stop doing this research. They kept doing it anyway. Dr. Fauci personally signed off on funding for this research. This research is plausibly linked to the origins of the pandemic. Again, contrary to what Barack Obama ordered at the time. This is very necessary in my mind to investigate and get to the bottom of whether that was the origins of COVID, whether it was our own doing. They're blaming cultural practices of Chinese people. Oh, Chinese people eat bat, that's why it happened. This is our research we paid for. That is important to find out so we don't do it again. And that investigation was foreclosed by this pardon. And that was
you said some key words there. Very necessary to get to the bottom of whether that's the root cause.
Yeah.
And so once we do that, President Trump would try to get Fauci in jail and then figure it out later. We need to figure that out first and then not attack.
We can't even
Fauci.
figure it out now. Former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is blasting the gerrymandering wars and urging California to reject Proposition 50, which is an initiative to redraw congressional district maps.
Now, Prop 50 aims to add more Democratic seats for California, much like how Texas initiative is doing the same for Republicans. The 7-time Mr. Olympia winner appeared on CNN with Jake Tapper, where he expressed sadness at the partisan battle. Let's take a listen.
There's this war going on all over the United States. Who can out-cheat the other one? You know, Texas started it. They did something terribly wrong. And then all of a sudden California says, well, then we have to do something terribly wrong. And then now other states are jumping in. And now this is spreading like wildfire all over the country. And it saddens me to see that we're going in the opposite direction rather than having an independent commission draw the district lines.
Schwarzenegger did push back on the notion, however, that the Republican Party was the ones to blame and that they started all of this. Let's watch.
No, Jake. There has been gerrymandering going on for 200 years. There is such extreme gerrymandering going on that in a state like Massachusetts, that has like 40% of the people voting for Trump, they have 0 representatives. The Republican Party has 0 representatives sent to the House. Think about that. In New Mexico, 45% of the people voted for Trump and vote Republican, and 0 is sent to the House. 0 representatives from the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think Schwarzenegger makes a good point that we should not pretend that gerrymandering is just something that Republicans are doing. There are states, as he's pointed out, that have significant, albeit minority, populations of Republican voters that get 0 representation. The same is true for Democrats. If Republicans start tinkering, to squeeze more seats out of their safe states, then Democrats do the same, and it's a kind of an appalling system, and one that creates more warped polarization, because when you create, both parties have an interest in creating these very safe seats for their own, like they're fine with that. They're like, okay, well, this state, you get these seats and we get these seats, and none of them are competitive, which means then the most far-left liberals can get elected and the most far-right Republicans can get elected because they're safe seats. And increasingly, and both parties have an incentive to do this, and I think it's a terrible system, but there's not much hope for fixing very broken systems in our system, unfortunately, because the system overall is a broken one.
And I'm not a fan of gerrymandering. I think that the American
no
public,
one's a fan.
Yeah, obviously people in Texas,
people in power are fans of it.
But no one in
voters.
Well, I guess this is my biggest thing. So in an ideal world, Texas did start this, in my opinion. We're not talking about history and how Massachusetts became the way. We're talking about this year. Texas started this. Newsom responded.
Right now.
Yes, we're talking about under the Trump administration. What's going on right now?
History does not exist.
No, history can exist. We're talking about right now. I'm not a fan of gerrymandering. It all happens.
Yeah.
Historically on both sides of the aisle. Texas started this recently.
Now, so it's California's fault.
No, you can't. This happened this year because Newsom is responding by calling this an election rigging response act. And the difference between what Newsom is doing and what's happening in Texas is that on November 4th, Gavin Newsom is giving people the option. He's saying, listen, you guys go during this special election season. There's going to be many local elections, and you go to the polls and let me know if you want to do this. Now, if the majority of California people that are voting in these local elections go to the polls and say, yes, we would like to change the seats in our state, then what's the issue? He's actually asking the people. You said like most Americans don't feel that that way. Well, Texas will just never know. But in California, we will know on November 4th, and I'm excited to know. And that's the biggest difference. Even though I don't like gerrymandering, I think that if you're going to do it, Gavin Newsom did it the right way.
Wow, what a hero.